So, Chairman Rosner, at my law firm, we have this very annoying tradition where when a new hire comes on board, we ask that person to share a fun fact about themselves. So, could you share a fun fact about yourself?
Well, before I answer that, I just want to say thank you very much to EBA for hosting me, for inviting me here, and for allowing me to grace the stage with greatness of Chairman Bay. It's an honor to be here, and when I was on FERC staff, I used to attend. This is one of the few conferences where they would let you outside the building to listen to the bar. There would be all these warnings about here's when you need to walk out because it's pending. But I learned a lot, and I always felt that this was a great resource, great institution to people who are lawyers by trade, and also I'm not a lawyer, but you know, you have the professionals in the industry, and so thank you very much. Fun fact, I think I would say I would describe myself as DIY dangerous back at home. You know, my wife can tell you some stories, but I think one of the recent ones is, you know, I live in the DC suburbs, and over the summer we had all these strong thunderstorms, and a neighbor's tree fell into our backyard. And so I hopped onto ChatGPT to say, you know, whose tree is this? And it gave me a lot of information about tree law, which I didn't even know this was a thing, but it's a big thing. And the answer I was looking for was that it was mine, which it was. And so I had to buy a chainsaw. We chopped the thing up, and now it's drying out back to be used in the fireplace this winter. So you know, other projects like that, it was a little dangerous, but you know, still all in one piece, and excited to talk energy now.
Great, and you've got that firewood for this coming winter. So you've been doing energy work for almost 20 years. You were at DOE, the Bipartisan Policy Center, you were on FERC staff, Senate E&R, then of course on the commission, and now chairman. So as you look back on your journey through energy, what takeaways do you have? And is there anything that you know now that you wish you had known almost 20 years ago?
So, couple things. I mean, first of all, thank you for characterizing the career in the way that you did. I mean, I think a few things I've learned is that little things can be really hard when you don't have agreement and consensus, and big things get really easy when you do. And so that's been something that's motivated me throughout my career. You know, just to give you a hint of the political philosophy that I think gets good success for the country is, you know, I was a founding staffer when this think tank called the Bipartisan Policy Center was getting stood up. Actually, that's where I met Chairman Bay the first time when I was working there, and he came by to visit one of the fellows there. But yeah, I think when you can have consensus, it makes it easier to get durable outcomes. It makes it more certain that we can get progress. We don't always have it, and you know, I've worked on many endeavors over the years where we just don't have consensus on it as a nation for a variety of different reasons. But I think on energy in particular right now, I feel really strongly about the statute that FERC follows. It's narrow but deep. It doesn't talk a lot about fuels. It talks a lot about reliability, and you know, my work at FERC, you know, I think I'm very optimistic about continuing the good work of prior commissions and of the commission that I'm honored to be part of right now. And so, you know, you also asked me, you know, a question about what if I knew today what I knew then. I think on that one, I remember early in my career, and when I was working at the Bipartisan Policy Center, someone said, "Hey, we got this really exciting project. It's on natural gas contracts. Are you excited about it? Are you interested?" Actually, he never said excited. He just said, "Are you interested?" I said, "Yes." No idea what that is. But one thing led to another. There was the shale gas discovery like 6 weeks later. And that work actually culminated. Commissioner Honorable was the Nehru Gas Committee chair, and she was a member of this task force that we had. And the thrust of that project was state PSCs before shale had been on the wrong side of these long-term hedges for natural gas procurement for their residential customers, and it was causing a lot of volatility. And so as a state PSC commissioner, she had sort of two goals. One was least cost, the other was stable price. And so they were trying to thread the needle on giving some other Nehru colleagues some support to go, have a diverse portfolio of gas contracts. And so anyway, I learned a lot about natural gas. That's helped me get a bunch of other jobs here in Washington on energy. But also that same premise rings very true today in a different area, where that skill set that I developed and the perspective that was brought there is relevant on the electric side, where in some parts of the country we have organized markets, and those markets dictate procurement, and a lot of that procurement is done on a spot basis or on a short-term basis. And so one of the conversations we had back at the 888 First Street was, is there a role for more diversification of state capacity contracting for a variety of different reasons? And that continues to be a conversation that is active, and that could be part of the solution, not just to stabilize price, but also in the case where a state or wanted to procure a certain type of generation, or just have more exposure, can actually get things built. Perhaps more rapidly, perhaps not, but that's questions that people with expertise are wrestling with. And my view is we should just have options. So thanks for that question.
A lot there, obviously. And certainly there's that old saying, which I'm sure you've heard, that the commission is at its most effective when it speaks with one voice. And clearly your comment goes to that, as well as the need for many different kinds of resources, particularly given all the dramatic change that's happening. Now, there aren't many commissioners who actually spent time at the commission as staff. I was lucky enough to be one of them. You are as well. And so how has that experience that you've had being on staff affected you now that you're chairman? And is it a good thing or bad thing in your view that you were once on staff?
Well, I think I'll just say this. I mean, first off, the commission, I think you put it, is a gem of an agency, in large part because of the staff. They have tremendous expertise. They have a commitment to the mission and to the statutes that FERC has been entrusted by Congress to work under. I can just tell you, every day that I work there, the staff are working to boil down incredibly complicated filings. Thank you, everyone in the room, for those. And try and get at, what is the decision that needs to be made? What are the consequences of that decision? There's no way that me or my fellow commissioners could do the work without the staff. And so, if you heard one thing, it's the staff is essential, and the staff is highly credentialed and doing amazing work. As a member of the staff before becoming a commissioner, I think, understanding the cadence of the commission, of the life cycle of a Federal Power Act order or a natural gas order or a hydropower order, just understanding how that works and where the key decision points, where those are, I think is really key. I think also, obviously, like any business, relationships matter, and everyone in this room knows that. That's one of the reasons why EBA is such a great institution, is that you bring people in the bar and in the professional community together. And so, I think I had a little bit of a leg up on that, from the get-go. But I can tell you, from just walking down the hall and seeing staff, meeting with every single office, I think my colleagues have more than caught up. But I do think, especially in the early days, it gave a lot of comfort to have some understanding. But also, there was so much that I didn't work on as staff. I think, the one that comes to mind most easily is, I worked a lot on Power Act, a little bit on the Gas Act side of the work, but never touched the oil rates portfolio, which there's a whole set of people in Washington, D.C. and in industry throughout the country that depend on the Commission's work in that area to unlock infrastructure and keep and provide energy that's so essential to our economy. And so every single day I'm learning something new. Again, I think the statutes that we follow are narrow but very deep and very nuanced. And so, there's only so much preparation you can get until you jump in off the deep end.
I would completely have to agree with you that staff just does an outstanding job, and won't embarrass the staff in the room today by asking them to stand, but know that every member of the Energy Bar that works with you very much appreciates your service. And you kind of alluded to this already, Chairman Rosner, but what were the biggest surprises to you in going from staff to the Commission?
The first surprise, was just how incredibly reliant getting the work done is on having an expert staff. I was always sure we were doing important work, but a lot of things I worked on was you work 6 months or even a year, and then you send a memo to eventually to the chair and then to the Commission, and you're done. But this is like every day, the cadence. I think just in the last month, I think we've approved 80 things notationally. That's not even a particularly high month, but it's a lot. And so that surprised me. The other thing that I mentioned this again is just oil rate. There's so much the Commission does that a lot of people in this room. You're probably in your lane. You probably have a lot of expertise on your lane, but then you got to look out over all these things. And so for me, all of the portfolio broadening, beyond just Power Act, Gas Act work, has been interesting and surprising.
I see a number of former commissioners in the room today. I see Mark Spitzer there, and I know James Danley is somewhere here, but I think all of us have the same experience that when you go to the Commission, even if you think you know your stuff, suddenly it's like drinking from this fire hose, right? And you're like, wow, FERC regulates that, but in fact, FERC does, right? You've been the chairman now for a little more than a month. How has it been so far, and what have been the biggest adjustments for you in terms of going from commissioner to chairman?
I like to say that I've been living the dog catches car life for the last month, which has been great. But I would say, I'm incredibly grateful to President Trump for appointing me. I already, in my previous job, as a commissioner, for me, this was just, I was beyond delighted and humbled to do the work, and so that continues. I spend a lot more time now thinking about how to keep all the processes that need to kind of hum along to keep the commission functioning, make sure we're meeting our statutory deadlines, doing that administrative side of the ledger, and also thinking through things like where do we want to be in 2 months or 3 months, and is that soon enough to achieve the objective that we're hoping to achieve. So a lot more, longer term planning. And I will say I depend even more now than I did as an individual commissioner on working with colleagues, finding places where we agree, getting consent to proceed on things. Because as we issue a lot of orders, on any given day of the month, but without everyone agreeing to vote, it doesn't happen outside of a notice meeting, and so that just requires a lot of work, a lot of communication, collaboration across the offices. I also appreciate now more than ever the different interests and expertise of my fellow commissioners, and I won't call out anyone in particular here, but I can tell you just in the orders that have issued over the last month, different offices have spent more time with them than others because of either interest or prior expertise on them. And I just think that's wonderful. It's a team effort to get this work done. When we don't do it right, you let us know in the dockets, and that's all well and good. But those have been some of the things that have surprised me, but also been really a joy to work on.
It sounded just like more than a few things in terms of what's now on your plate compared to when you were a commissioner. So every chairman, whether intentionally or not, has a leadership style. And there's really a spectrum, right? It goes from the autocratic, the chairman who's large and in charge, to a chairman who's more collaborative, more consensus-oriented. Where do you put yourself on that spectrum of leadership styles?
I think I definitely trend towards trying to find consensus on these issues. I think just given the moment that the country's in, where we have a lot of growth, which is really exciting and a huge economic opportunity for people who want to see the country succeed, like myself. And we also have, price pressures. Consumers have tough time paying their bills. Some of our manufacturers are very price sensitive. And so finding that balance, I think, is really important. And finding ways to get buy-in to actually build some of the infrastructure that, the FERC price, we don't directly permit most types of infrastructure. And those that we rely on state counterparts and colleagues to work through their process, it's so important to have that consensus and buy-in and belief that these projects are good for their states, for their ratepayers, for their neighbors. And so, for me, I think the right way to do that is to try and find consensus as much as possible. But we don't always, and I also think that's a sign of a healthy commission. Even in the last few weeks, there have been a few things where different people have different perspectives, and that's why Congress created an independent commission to have 5 different perspectives on it. And but my style for sure is looking for consensus if we can get it, and we'll try and do that as much as possible going forward.
I'm reminded of something that Mark Spitzer used to say when I was on staff. He would say, you can disagree without being disagreeable. And so even if your colleague dissents, for their own reasons, you can disagree with your colleague in a way that is very, very respectful. And clearly, you are doing that. So it's probably a little known fact for many of the people in the room today, but the commission used to have this tradition of meeting for a lunch a day or two before the open meeting. And the general counsel would have to be there to make sure you didn't talk about some sort of pending matter and violate the quorum rule, right? Because that would require an open meeting. And for many years, that lunch fell by the wayside. But I understand you have brought that back, right? Now, why did you do that, Chairman Rosner?
I just thought it'd be fun. No, somebody mentioned, when I became chair, somebody mentioned that there were these lunches that were being convened, and I was like, how'd they stay out of FERC jail? Did the ex parte police show up and the Sunshine Act, people? But no, I just thought it would be, nice to spend an hour with colleagues. We do it one-on-one, on a regular basis. Unfortunately, and today I had lunch with EBA, but what we're doing instead is a refreshments later in the day moment, and we'll be joined by someone from our general counsel's office, and I think it'll be great. We spend tons of time talking about work and the dockets, and that's just really easy to do and fun, but also everybody has been doing different things. There's so many opportunities to go and meet stakeholders at events like this and events around the country. And so I think just, you could easily spend an hour just hearing about what a colleague's been up to without getting into the substance. And so that's the plan later today.
Now, when you say refreshments, is that with air quotes?
No comment.
So you can't go to an energy conference nowadays without there being some discussion about the dramatic load growth that's happening nationally, right? Because AI and data centers, electrification, the onshoring of manufacturing processes. How can FERC help industry meet that challenge?
Yeah, thanks. I love this question. So I think this is one of the most important issues in front of FERC right now. I'm going to stay high level because we have a pending proceeding that is adjacent, a number of pending proceedings that are adjacent to this question. But what I see is customers of all kinds, AI, manufacturing, just regular old retail load growth of more energy use in homes and businesses. All kinds of customers need timely access to the grid and all the benefits that they get from the grid. I think there's a statistic where, I think electric power is something like 6% of GDP, but the rest of it is kind of really fundamentally reliant on that. And so I really see my job right now as being faithful to the statutory authority that Congress has entrusted the Commission to work on, to make sure that we can set out clear leadership, clear, durable rules that make getting more demand connected to the grid possible. I've been vocal on a couple different actions that I think we need to unlock, but they all revolve around building things. It frankly just, I think, takes too long to build things in this country. And so one of the great honors I have in my role at FERC is, being able to try and find within our current statutes any way that I can to make that faster and more certain. And so whether that's, the planning process to build new transmission, whether it's a price signal from a market to incent entry of new generation, whether it's, enabling pipeline infrastructure, or I mentioned transmission, but I'm just going to say it again because it's so fundamental to some of the challenges we have on getting headroom on the grid to connect. Like those are all the things that we need to be focused on. This commission and commissions prior have been incredibly active on that, and I think you can rest assured that we'll be continuing to have that posture.
So you mentioned the importance of building things, and on that I think everyone in this room would agree. And you've been a very strong supporter of interconnection reform. So the Commission issued Order 2023 in July of 2023, and that obviously was a very important step for the Commission. So has the Commission pretty much completed its work on interconnection reform at this point, or are there more things you would like to see staff and the Commission examining with respect to interconnection policy and reform?
Well, a couple thoughts. So first of all, I think of Order 23 as necessary but not sufficient to get where we need to go on interconnection queues. I just think what we did there was, and this was before my time on the Commission, I've been working on the compliance a lot, and you asked about staff. One of the things I learned on staff is it's the compliance, not the rule, that really matters. It's almost easy to write the rule. It's very hard to figure out how to do compliance that's consistent with the statute in a way that embraces all the regional differences across the country. On interconnection, what we did in that rule, I would say, having not voted on the underlying rule but support it, is that the Commission looked out across the country. It did extensive stakeholder engagement. It identified a number of different best practices, a number of places where we understood from the record that there were challenges in terms of getting the certainty and needed to move these queues faster, and it implemented that. And so now we're in September 2025. We have completed compliance filings with much of the country. We've completed a first round of compliance filings with all of the RTOs as of a few months ago. But I still think there's more to do. And one place that I've been really interested to make more progress is on things that can be done without more regulation. Because I think the evidence of potential resource adequacy shortfall in some parts of the country in the next 5 years means that we don't have 5 years to do a FERC rulemaking. And we need to look for places where RTOs, ISOs, transmission owning utilities that have a hand in this process, what are the things that they can just do now themselves without a FERC action? And one place that I again have been really excited is interconnection automation. At a high level, if you don't know what that is, there are a few different companies that have found ways to do these studies that are needed to make sure that you can connect generation safely to the grid much faster. And we've got some early results. I think MISO, or I know MISO, has published some materials in their interconnection working group area on their website, which I encourage you to join those meetings because it's fascinating to see in real time how they're openly and transparently debugging and fine-tuning that process. But MISO identified the old way that they did their 2021 cluster study took 686 days. The new way with automation took 10. And the regulatory requirement on that was 0. I'm interested in finding ways to use technologies like that to get answers faster. Because again, these queues right now, the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, they release a study every year where they say, hey, here's the average wait. The average wait last year was 5 years. I think they just released an update saying it's gone down a little bit, but it's still 4, maybe almost 5 years, which is too long. I mean, in my time as a commissioner, I've worked on a number of different interconnection waivers where we've had projects that have been in the queues so long that the equipment that they've proposed to include in their queue interconnection request is no longer manufactured. And so I don't think that's meeting the moment. I don't think that's acceptable. I really think we got to get these processes down to a year or less. And we also have to look for other ways to do more with less. Especially when there's minimal impact to the grid. And some of the RTOs and ISOs have come forward with proposals like that we've worked on. And so that's one thing that I feel really strongly about. I sent some letters, I got some responses, but it's been a couple months and the problem is still acute. And so my RTO friends can expect a follow-up, a friendly follow-up. Thanks.
Yeah, well, expediting the internet connection study process would just be a game changer, right, in terms of addressing the backlog in the queue. So you've talked about some of the challenges, the dramatic load growth, the importance of getting stuff built. What about the opportunities? What opportunities does the Commission have now that really excite you?
I see a lot of the work that Congress set out for the Commission to do to fundamentally kind of boil down to economic development. It's activities that unlock economic development in this country, and energy is fundamental to that. And so, whether it's interconnection queues, transmission planning, natural gas or hydropower infrastructure projects, I just think there's so much runway for the Commission to do all of those things faster, to do all of those things in a way where we're reaching all stakeholders and getting more buy-in for the projects. I'm a huge believer. I've been to every NARUC since I assumed this role and plan to go to all of them. I just think that the collaboration with our state regulator counterparts is so important to getting this work done. Congress in its wisdom, it gave us, the FERC, some things to do, and they gave states other things to do. The state role on generation siting and transmission siting is really, we have to be on the same page with them in order to get these projects built. In my view, the worst thing that can happen is that, we have markets, we're printing a price signal that isn't actually resulting in build because of a difference of views about that between our state friends and FERC. And so I spend a lot of time on that, and in my view, it's time well spent. I've learned a lot, and I'm looking to find more areas of agreement, more consensus on our filings before they get here. And so, yeah, I think that'd be my answer to your question.
So I see that we're out of time, so I will ask you one last question. I found out that you are a fly fisher, Chairman Rosner. So what is your favorite river to fly fish, and what's your favorite fly, your go-to fly?
Okay, I'm gonna go back to my roots. So my grandfather lived in Northeast Connecticut, the Quiet Corner, and he had a blueberry farm. And on the edge of the farm was this river. It was called the 5 Mile River. It's a very small river in Northeast Connecticut, and it had some brook trout in it. And I had to look up what this fly was called, because I remember the LL Bean fly rods, but I didn't remember what the fly was called. And I found a picture of it. I think it's called a woolly bugger, which for everyone who's not a fly fishing aficionado, I knew you were going to ask me about this when you found out about it, is a black fly. So thanks very much, Chairman Bay. Honor to be with you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chairman Rosner.